Welcome to the worldwide free seminar of the Family Dog Project, live from Budapest. The event is proudly sponsored by Purina.
Okay, good evening everyone, and I would like to greet all the followers online also. I hope they are enjoying this event in their cozy rooms all over the world. And if I would ask them all over the world what does the dog say, not the fox, the dog, they would answer us that they woof, they say wow, they generally bark. This is the most common and most well-known vocalization of dogs, and we all can agree. But what is a bark? It is a quite distinct vocalization, and it contains single barks, which are really short, and these vocalizations are just a fraction of a second, but they are really, really loud. They have a lot of energy in them, and they are, thanks to this, really noisy. And they are used in sequences. So they are not used as alone small vocalizations, but sequences. And it is not very well known, but not just dogs, but other relatives, wolves and other canids also bark. And I would like to show some examples and hope you will hear. No? Okay. So these sound really the same independently from whether the species is a wolf or a maned wolf or a coyote. I will try to maybe, no. So they are woo, 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 like this. The maned wolf has a really noisy and deep one, like this. And we know that these species use these vocalizations really rarely. And in specific territorial defense context, and much more shorter sequences than dogs. And we can say that, yeah, dog barks are really different from these because they are far more elaborated. Contextually, they bark all the time. They bark when they're greeting us. They bark when we leave them. They bark when someone is out the garden, and so on. And these barks also differ acoustically. Let's see whether I can play these. Oh yeah. I don't know whether you heard, but this was a quite high-pitched and fast-pulsing type of bark. And this one is a slow, deep, and a really harsh, noisy one. And we know from earlier studies that this acoustical variability can be linked to emotional state of the dog. And this pops up the question whether barks have a role in communication between dogs and between humans. But yeah, is this a question you can ask? For owners, this is pretty obvious. If you ask an owner, they will say that, yeah, I know what my dog is barking about all the time. But if we want to approach this question from a scientific point of view, we have to ask different questions. And for example, we can say that, yeah, it is possible that every single owner learn to recognize the barks of their own dogs. And it is possible that, yes, every dog barks differently. And if we approach this whole bark situation from a scientific point of view, we can ask those questions that whether barks change due to the domestication or whether really barks play a role in dog-human communication. And Péter Pongrácz, my colleague, who will follow me on this event, and his former PhD student, Csaba Molnár, started to tackle these questions 10 years ago, and they collected moody barks. Moody is a traditional Hungarian herding breed, middle-sized and quite nice, and really, really loud and noisy. They bark all the time, and they collected barks from different contexts. For example, when a stranger approaching the fence at the garden or the door of the flat, it's called a Schutzhund. When a stranger attacks the dog and the owner. And we had the before walk situation when the owner started to prepare for walk, dressing up, getting the leash. The playful situation, oh no, sorry, this is the playful situation when the owner played tug of war or wrestled with the dog. This was asking for a ball context, and this third one was the alone tied to some object, a tree or something, and left alone. And they used these barks in a playback study when they played back these bark sequences to people and asked them to rate what kind of emotions do they think that the dog experiencing during bark. So they had to rate the barks on aggression, fear, despair, playfulness, and happiness scales. And in a second run, they also had to try to figure out from which context these barks were recorded. And what they found that humans were surprisingly good. They attributed the emotion that is most probable in that context to the barks, and they recognized the barks really well, the context of the barks really well, and this wasn't affected very much by their experience. But there are still open questions. One drawback of this study was that we had only Hungarian listeners, Hungarian subjects, but in human research it is well known that cultural differences can affect how humans perceive others' emotion and how they attribute emotion to others. So we joined forces with a Portugal group and mainly Karin Silva, a postdoc in Portugal, and hopefully she's following the talk and not very disappointed. And they replicated our study. They played back the same barks for Portuguese people and asked them the same questions. They had to fill out the same questionnaires that the Hungarians, so we could compare their performance and emotional assessment directly with the Hungarian subjects. So what we found, in case of emotion assessment, I will show you some really nice, colorful bar graphs. On this side, I will show always the Hungarian responses, and on this side, the Portuguese ones, and each bar represents one emotional scale. So in case of stranger barks, when a stranger approached the fence, both the Hungarians and the Portuguese subjects rated these barks the highest on aggression scales. But there's a quite interesting difference that in Portugal, the subjects rated these barks more fearful and more desperate. And we see the same pattern in the Schutzhund, the fight when the nasty experimenter attacked the dog. In this case also, in Portugal, the fearful and despair ratings were higher compared to the Hungarian ones. In the next situation, the alone barks, when the dog was tied to a tree and left alone, there's no big difference between the two groups. Both Hungarians and Portuguese rated these the highest on fear and despair scales. In case of walk, we have a quite distinct pattern. In Hungary, they rated these barks more playful or happy, while in Portugal, they rated it higher on despair. And actually, if we compare the walk and the alone barks on the Portugal side, they are not very different from each other. And finally, we had the playful context when the Hungarians and the Portuguese subjects both rated it the highest on the playfulness scale, but while the Hungarians rated it lower on any other negative scale, in Portugal we see higher aggression ratings and also higher despair ratings. And in the case of the context recognition, we see a really interesting pattern. Again, I will show here the results from Hungary, and this is from the results from Portugal. And on each bar, you will see the distribution of answers given by the subjects, and the colors will show what they responded to one given context. And in Hungary, the stranger barks were quite well recognized, and they were rated as stranger barks. And in the case of Schutzhund, the fight, we see that again these most were correctly recognized, but a bit confused with stranger barks. In case of walk, there's not so nice pattern. The answers were quite evenly distributed among the different non-aggressive situations. In case of alone barks, we see correct responses most of the time. Ball is again similar to the walk, and there is no real distinction from the other contexts. And in play, the highest, it was quite well recognized, but a bit confused with ball, asking for ball context. In case of Portugal, so the Portuguese subjects, we see a quite similar pattern in case of the stranger barks. These were well recognized, although the fight, the Schutzhund context, was very commonly mixed with the stranger barks. In case of walk, we see again the same pattern, although as in Hungary, although these were most of the time mixed with alone barks, and alone barks also were mixed with the before walk context. And in the asking for ball, again, as in the walk context, there's no clear distinction, and the playful barks were mostly recognized as playful ones, although in Portugal they were mixed a lot of time with the Schutzhund context. So to wrap the whole thing up, we see that the general emotional rating is quite similar across these two countries. The negative aggressive barks were rated the highest on aggression and lowest on playfulness. The alone bark was the most fearful and despaired bark, and the play barks were highest on positive scales. Although in Portugal, we see higher despair ratings on the Schutzhund and the before walk barks, and play barks were rated higher on aggression, and the walk was more similar to alone barks. And in the case of the context, we probably see that the recognition and also the error pattern follows the emotional ratings. The stranger barks were the easiest to recognize, and this can be maybe due to that it is quite adaptive to recognize aggression in others. And the walk and the before walk and the ball situations were the hardest to recognize, and this is probably because the dogs can be really in different variable inner states, so we cannot be quite sure what's happening in them. And we see that Hungarians were a little bit better in recognition of the context, and maybe this is because they assessed more according to the real context of the barks, the emotions. And this is supported by the error pattern. We see that Schutzhund was mainly confused with stranger barks, and these both can be considered aggressive ones. And in case of Portugal subjects, the playful barks were confused with Schutzhund, and we saw that they rated the play barks higher on aggression also, and not just playfulness. And the walk in Portugal was mostly confused with alone barks, and we saw that the emotional recognition was quite the same, as the emotional assessment of Portuguese were quite the same between these two contexts. So the take-home message is that we see that emotion assessment probably has a strong biological root, and this assessment can highly affect the context recognition in this case, and culture can have a small but significant effect on this recognition. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the talk.